God bless you to everyone, our listening audience. We bring you greetings in the wonderful name of Jesus for a brand new day. And we thank you for joining us for our New York State Council Wellness Clinic. And it is comprised of our leading ladies, the ministers' wives, ministers' widows, and also our deacons' wives. And I'd like to get some of our protocol out of the way, and that is on behalf of our Bishop Kevin Dobbs, who is the First Episcopal District of New York State Council. We also have Suffragan Bishop Derek Farmer, who is our council chairman, also District Elder Phyllis Lee Williams, who is our vice chair lady. And we also have our advisor, none other than District Elder Thelma D. Lewis. She is our advisor, and we would be remiss if we didn't mention we are a part of the Pentecostal Assemblies of the World, where Bishop Theodore L. Brooks Sr. is our presider. And then for our international ministers' wives and ministers' widows, we have Dr. Barbara Golder. At this time, it brings me a great privilege to introduce to some and present to others Dr. Theresa Rush, who will be our guest presenter on today, and she will be talking about, she is a medical doctor and also an OBGYN, and she will be providing us with some very good nuggets that will help us to navigate not only with ourselves, but also with our congregants. There was a first lady who asked the question, Lady Dobbs, can you please have something that can help us to be able to minister to our congregants who may be going through that change in life? So Dr. Rush, you may take the floor. God bless you.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Dobbs. I appreciate the invitation. And this morning, I'm going to be talking. I went mute. Can everyone hear me? Okay, because I can't hear myself. I was asked to share on the topic of menopause and emotional effects going through that transition. And I think it's kind of interesting discussing this topic because I can remember a few years ago, I was sharing with Dr. Dobbs that I had a call from someone called my office from a men's group who wanted to talk about menopause. And I immediately thought that's a mistake. They're not calling me to talk to a men's group about menopause. And they said, no, we really want to talk about menopause and how we can help our wives. And I went, wow, that is an awesome thing to do, to be thinking proactively like that, to how we can assist our wives through this process, and to realize that they had a role in that. So the first slide that I have up actually addresses a patient who actually did a wonderful book. It's called Menopause. It's Time Guys Got It. The Perfect Primer for Sensitivity Challenged Companions of the Hormonally Deprived. Now, this is a book that you can get through Amazon, and it's really a lot of comic relief. It really basically talks about the symptoms of menopause and in a very comical way, so that there can be a dialogue between couples on what women are going through at that time. Next slide is more of a little bit of a comic relief here that talks about menopause and how sometimes our significant others may not get it when we're going through, their nice, wonderful, calm wife then gets crazy about something that they may have said, and they're like going, wow, what happened? Chill out. What's the problem? And he may have said, honey, he may have said something, a comment about what you're wearing, and what you heard was I'm fat, and now she wants to kill you. Whereas before she probably would have let it go by without a problem. But this is where that communication gap is, and where men can kind of realize that your wife is not going crazy. She has not lost it, but she's going through some hormonal changes that's kind of gotten her on edge, and how you can be of help with that. So I first wanted to start this discussion talking about uh, menopause and what it is. If you can kind of go to the next slides. A lot of women in your congregations will start experiencing changes in their periods, and they may also start having hot flashes. That's kind of like the hallmark of the whole process. And they'll go to their physician and say, you know what, I want my hormones checked. And in asking for that, they get what's typically called an FSH, or if you're one of the hormones from your brain that regulates your ovarian function. Well, they'll get that lab done, and it's normal. And then they'll tell the woman, well, you're not in menopause yet. And then you're thinking, well, what's going on with me? Why do I feel like this? Why am I having hot flashes? Why are my periods all over the place? Why am I getting more headaches right before my period? Or in my case, I didn't have a lot of hot flashes. I just was hot at night, almost like someone put a hot plate underneath me. And I kept turning over and over and waking up. And then by the morning, instead of feeling nice and refreshed, you're tired, and you go through the rest of the day sluggish, and someone says something very innocuous to you, and you snap, and you're wondering, that's not me. So your moods are up and down, and you're wondering, well, my doctor just told me my labs are fine, so what's the problem? Well, the one thing that might be helpful is just defining what menopause means from your standpoint and from maybe your doctor's standpoint. When we say menopause, we're saying that your periods have stopped for at least a whole year, and you may have symptoms, you may not, but your periods have stopped. That's menopause. And the average age for that is about 51 to 52 years of age. So when someone comes in and they're maybe about 40, 45 to 50, and they're starting to have symptoms, and they get their hormones checked, so to speak, and they're normal, then they're kind of going, well, what is the problem? Where there's not a problem, you're just in what we call perimenopause, or around the menopause. You haven't totally finished with all of your eggs that give you your estrogen, but at the same time, you're still experiencing some of the estrogen deficiency from month to month. And I'm quite sure a lot of you will say that, you know what, when I went through that process, some months I felt good. And then some months I really got back to that hot flashing and not sleeping, and then it would go away. So I had this waxing and waning, and that's very, very typical of the perimenopause. So you haven't gotten through that last period yet, and your periods may be coming on a monthly basis, and you're still wondering, what is the problem? Well, you're going up and down with your hormones. Very similar to what happened when you started with your periods. How many of you guys remember or think about your daughters, and when they're just starting their periods, they tend to get a period maybe every 6 to 8 weeks, not everyone, but it tends to be a little off. It's not that regular thing that you always think about with your period cycles. Well, they come irregularly, and you know that they're moody. It's almost like they get up in the morning, they haven't done anything, but yet they're depressed. So that's because their hormonal levels are fluctuating quite a bit. And I find that at the beginning, what we call menarche, when they're first starting their periods, they'll go through that process and then you find that you get that process again as you're starting to go through that process of reaching the menopause. Now, some will ask me, well, when does that start? Well, the average age is about 47. So count back a little bit. Everyone's different. You might start that process somewhere in your mid 40s to until you go through your menopause. And on average, I would say about 51, 52. But realize these are guidelines. They're not set in stone. Whereas your counterpart or your sister or a cousin or a friend might still be menstruating at age 54 and not experiencing any of these symptoms. That doesn't mean that there's a problem with you. It just means that you're different, and God made us all different, and we go through the process a little differently, and at different times. So whereas like my sister had excessively really bad hot flashes. I had some, but I think mostly my sleep disorders were the thing that got me the most. So the process is different for each woman. And I think when you go to your doctor and you ask for hormones to be checked, realize that there's times when that FSH or that hormone level will be normal, but that doesn't mean that you're not going through the process. And it does not mean that there are things that you can't do to kind of help you out through that process. I just wanted to do a little anatomy with you if you go to the next slide. When I say FSH, that's a hormone that's in your brain that signals the ovary. Right, this is a picture of your uterus, your fallopian tube going down to your ovaries. Now, your ovary, when we're born, has about, I think, about 1 to 2 million eggs in it. Potential for eggs to be made over your lifetime. By the time you get to puberty, that 1 to 2 million drops down to 300,000. So that's a huge drop. That's what you start with in terms of eggs. And I mention eggs because that egg development each month is what actually helps you to produce the estrogen that we have that gives us our periods, that gives us that well-being. There's so many there. I'm going to show you a slide a little bit later, but there are estrogen receptors throughout our bodies, in our brain, in our skin, liver, in various organs that bladder, when we start decreasing with that estrogen, those areas are affected. But the first thing that we have is our eggs that are developing through our ovaries. And when we're going through that perimenopausal process, perimenopausal, remember, meaning around the menopause, those levels are going up and down because each of these eggs that develop, next slide, each egg that develops in there makes estrogen, and it builds a lining. And we know that as we're building a lining and we shed it each month, we get our periods, and we get it in for most of us, a nice monthly sessions. And we know that, our hormones are in balance. However, once we start getting to the perimenopause, you'll get an egg that may give you a good estrogen surge and you feel your normal self. The next month, that egg may not be the best egg. Remember, we're dealing with eggs that have been there since puberty. Some of them have a better capacity to give us estrogen, others don't. So when we get an FSH level or an estrogen level for your hormonal check, it may be a little off in terms of you're going through the perimenopause, but your FSH level is still normal. So I say that it's all centered around the fact that as we're nearing menopause, we're getting to that last few thousands of eggs that we have left from puberty. And some of them will work good and some of them won't. So that's why you're getting the waxing and waning. Another thing that your docs can probably order to help to look for hormonally is not only an FSH, but also your thyroid. I diagnose a lot of ladies with thyroid disorders who are having hot flashes, fatigue, their hair is changing, or their skin is a little drier, those types of things, and they think they're going through their menopause. And it's not necessarily menopause, but because another hormone or another hormonal organ, your thyroid is starting to fail. So if you have family members who have thyroid problems, you haven't been diagnosed with that. Not only should they be checking your FSH and your estrogen level, they should be checking your thyroid. And in some cases, your prolactin levels also. So there are other hormonal levels that they can order, especially when you're on the younger side. And when I say younger, probably around 40 to 45, where I don't anticipate that you really should be going into menopause that early, although it's not impossible. So I mention that so that you can kind of counsel your ladies that this is the time to get in with their doctors and talk to them about what they're experiencing physically as well as emotionally, and realizing that even if the numbers don't match up, that they're not going crazy, that it's eventually the numbers will catch up, but there are things that they can do in the meantime until those numbers are actually up in the menopausal range. So don't get I have a lot of patients that are so centered in on checking a number on their hormones, and when it doesn't match up and give them the diagnosis, they're still frustrated. Don't be frustrated. Just realize that the numbers are kind of lagging behind, but there are things that you can do. So let's kind of go to that next slide. Now, actually, the next one up. We've talked about that. How many people remember that game of the straw that broke the camel's back? It's a game where you had a camel with its head and its back, and in the middle you put a little basket, and then you put straws in, and the person who put that last straw in, that makes it too heavy, and it breaks the camel's back, and it just breaks apart. And it was a kid game that was back in the, oh gosh, I don't know, in the 1970s or so. I know I was small when that came out, but I kind of, this picture that I put up, the straw that broke the camel's back, I put up for a reason, because when we're going through that perimenopause and you're experiencing hot flashes here, that come and go, you're experiencing periods that are different than your monthly, every month period. And you count on that, because a lot of us, you're working, you're doing things, and then all of a sudden, whoo, I didn't expect this period, and it's here, and I don't have all my supplies. Or vice versa, I expected my period, it's not here. So now I'm either worried that, whoops, I might be pregnant, or two, I've got all of these premenstrual tension feelings. I'm moody, I'm crampy, I'm bloated, I'm this, I'm that. And those symptoms don't go away until my period comes, but it's not coming. So all of that irritability, another straw in the camel's back. And I have to do all of this. I'm fatigued. I'm tired. I'm a little bit more anxious and depressed, which can definitely happen with the perimenopause. I find that some of my ladies who, actually, if you can set that down a little bit, the slide. There we go. a lot of my ladies who have a diagnosis are dealing with anxiety or depression. They're fine. They're able to handle it with all of the hats that they have as women. And I put this on here because I thought this was kind of interesting, because as women, we do we have a lot of different roles that we perform, and we juggle them very well when everything is in line and we're feeling well. We have our roles as wives, those of us that are married. We have those of us who have children. We're working as moms. Again, we're wives, moms, we're daughters, we're getting older. We have older parents who need us. And we kind of sometimes feel that role is now being flip-flop, where we're feeling like we're the parent and our parents are now the kids, where we're dealing with some of the aging issues. So that's another straw on that camel's back. We're still working in some cases as employers or employees, and we still have our duties at church. We want to be a part of and that's the most important things for us, to be a part of the church and doing the things that we're doing there. And that's another straw there. It's a good straw, but it's another straw. And we kind of feel that we've been able to juggle this and handle it over the years. But then all of a sudden we hit that mid 40s and we're going through the perimenopause, where we now have all of these additional things like anxiety, depression. I'm fatigued. I'm hot flashing and I'm not sleeping. That's just the last straw on that camel's back that just kind of unravels things. So just like in this pandemic, where I've heard this phrase work-life balance, I really kind of feel that this is a good time in the perimenopause to kind of step back a bit and reevaluate our schedules, and to maybe set some boundaries. And as leaders, women and leaders in the church, that's a time to maybe counsel women who have been really just kind of pushing themselves, and how their work-life balance, so to speak. They've just been struggling through and just kind of going, I just have A, B, and C to do, and I'm just going to get it done. And they kind of put themselves on the back burner and not realizing that. And I tell my patients this all the time: you are not a robot. You're not a machine. You have to be able to input and give yourself things that are going to enable you to continue doing your duties in an efficient manner. So counseling during that time to say, you know what, it's okay to start setting some boundaries for yourself. If you have to step back from doing 3 or 4 things, instead of maybe cutting back to 1 or 2 in some of the things that you're volunteering for, that might be something that you need to do to get through this process, because it's just a process that you're going through for a short period of time, hopefully. For others, it's a little bit longer. But realizing that we need to use wisdom. If this is the time that you need to step back and say, you know what, for years and years and years, I've said I need to get this weight off. Weight that's now coming on more so in the perimenopause and definitely in the menopause. You're not going to feel and be able to perform efficiently if you've got that extra weight on. And for years now, you've come in and said, or you've told yourself, okay, I want to lose weight. I know I've got to lose weight. But you have no action plan on how I'm going to lose that weight. And that's where the support from other women may be helpful. And when I say that, I had a patient who came in, and during the pandemic, I said, you know what, you've been able to get your weight down, and you're eating well. What are you doing differently? And she said, you know what, I decided to do a Zoom with my family members I think I think they get together a few times a week and they do a Zoom workout, which is awesome. She took time, took time in her schedule to say, okay, I'm going to do some more exercising, but I'm going to do two things. They spend about 15, 20 minutes in prayer, finding out what the other family members may need in prayer, addressing that. So they're addressing their spiritual needs, but they also realize I got a physical body. This is what I'm still working with here. So they spend the rest of the time just working out, something as easy as that. And you can promote that when you see people women coming in and going, you know what, I'm starting to get that weight creeping on. And unfortunately, where does that weight go? To our waist. And so we're like going, I never had a belly before. What can I do about that? We'll start working with maybe a different type of exercising, not just walking, although walking is great, but maybe starting to do some things with yoga or Pilates where you're engaging those core muscles. I'm just throwing out some things, but you can research that and start having your ladies doing an active plan on how they're going to change what they don't like about their bodies as they're going through their menopause. Lastly, I wanted to say that some people go overboard with that. They want to still look like they did in their 20s. And I jokingly say, you know what, as we age, God put a little bit of, padding back on, and I'm patting my little side here. He put a little padding on you because he knows that as we get older, we get a little bit more frail in some areas. And you don't have to be this skinny mini. And that shouldn't be our goal. The goal should be being healthy, having a good cholesterol, cholesterol, my blood pressure being in balance, my blood sugar. Those are the goals, not necessarily looking like something on a magazine page. So take that time and encourage your ladies to take that time to actively do things that are going to help them spiritually and physically. I just gave that example of my patient. I thought that was absolutely wonderful. If you go to the next slide, estrogen deficiency encompasses or affects a lot of our body parts, especially the heart. When we're starting the process with the perimenopause, around the menopause, remember it can start for some women mid 40s up until the time that they go through the menopause, and definitely that first few years after the menopause. It's not simply hot flashes, I can't sleep, irritability. There are real things in your body that is also changing that can put your health at risk. And if their health is at risk, are you going to have them at church doing the things that they need to be doing and participating in an effective manner? No. They have more problems with heart disease because you have estrogen receptors throughout your body, in your heart, your breast, your brain. That's why sometimes we get that. Have you ever gone into a room and you're sitting there going, oh my gosh, I can't even remember why I came in here. You're not getting depression. You're not getting dementia. You just don't remember because the estrogen deficiency, because you don't have that in your, you have less estrogen in that brain area. So that memory function does go down a bit. In your bones, I counsel my ladies that are, I counsel from teens on up, because in terms of bone health, when you go through your menopause, especially the perimenopause and later after you finish your periods, you have a tendency to lose bone. Our population, we've been blessed with a bigger bone structure than some of our counterparts, but we absolutely live in a different era than some of our parents did, where their diets were a lot different than what we have today. So I can't say that well, I'm seeing a little bit more osteopenia and osteoporosis, which is low bone in our population, and that might be more dietary than anything else. But this is a good time to start looking at weight-bearing exercise and our diets to make sure that we're getting in adequate calcium in what we eat. That doesn't mean you necessarily need to do a calcium supplement, but it does mean that you need to be eating correct foods that are going to give you that calcium. So menopause isn't simply my periods have stopped or they're getting irregular, but there are issues that can happen in your body that will affect your overall health. And so this is a great time to counsel women and encourage them to make sure that they're looking at their diets, their exercise. And I'm going to go through some other things that can be helpful also. Can I get that next slide up? Hot flashes. And you guys may be doing this already, or you can counsel women to do this. Dress in layers. As you can see, or may not be able to see, let me see if I can do this. I have a sweater on. My husband, for whatever reason, has the air on. I don't think it's early enough for that, but he has the air on. You'll see I don't have sleeves, and this is like a sleeveless shirt. I'll put a sweat, and I do this all the time at work, because how many of you're sitting at work or you're sitting at church and you're starting to sweat and you're like going, oh, this outfit, yes, it looks good, but I can't take it off. So a lot of times I'll wear a sweater and I'll just layer it. Very simple. And then you put your coat on that. So you can layer your clothing. I have gotten away from wearing turtlenecks. I use if I'm going to wear something high on my neck, it's just going to be a mock turtleneck with no sleeves in it. And then I put a sweater over that. Things like coffee. Unfortunately, what I'm drinking right now, the caffeine in that can make you hot flash more. So I don't tell you to avoid caffeine per se, because some women actually, when you really stop cold turkey with your caffeine, whether it's with your coffee, your lattes, or even teas that have a high amount of caffeine in it, you can start having more headaches. So you want to wean. And this would be a good time to start substituting. I would recommend, if you are drinking a lot of coffee, start backing off of it and maybe substituting with teas that have less caffeine in it. There's a place on Main Street in Williamsville called Tea Leaves. They have a bunch of teas in there that you can start working to get teas that are less caffeinated, but that will still give you a little bit of a boost. Half and half. I use a Keurig. Other people use their coffee makers. Do half caffeinated and half non-caffeinated, and mix them so that you can start slowly getting that caffeine down in your diets. If you're a smoker, and some people still are working with that, but number one, the smoking will definitely make your hot flashes worse. And smokers tend to go through their menopause a lot earlier, because that smoke, that nicotine, is very caustic to the eggs. So, and that's what's giving you your estrogen. So one reason why you can tell women to start working with decreasing their smoking or continuing to work on smoking cessation is that they're going to feel better as they go through the process. Here they said put a wet washcloth against your neck, which I usually will say that's fine. Also, there's a lot of products out in the online. If it works for you, fantastic. I find that something as simple, if you're sweating at night, go to Dick's or go online, find some of those running outfits that runners use that have wicking material in it, that wicking that draws the wetness away from your skin. Runners use that all the time because they don't want to run and have that wet shirt sitting next to them. Find an outfit or just an oversized shirt that has wicking material. Sleep in that, so that if you're sweating, it doesn't stick to you and you waking up and now you're wet and uncomfortable and you got to change. Um, I also recommend using a little portable fan. That way your husband isn't getting frozen out because you got this big old fan or the window open or whatever. You've got a small fan. Don't let it blow directly into your face, but a little bit on the side of your body to kind of help cool you off a little bit. Having a nice cool glass of water sitting by your bedside so that you can kind of take a little bit of that in when you're hot. I have vaginal dryness here. If there are any gentlemen there, I'm sorry if this is kind of a little unusual for you, but start using lubricants. You didn't need to use it before. You might need to start. So you need to be flexible enough to add what you need to help you. Don't compare yourself to someone else who may not need it and you're thinking, well, what's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with you. You might just need a little extra help in that area. In terms of sleep problems, avoiding caffeine after a certain time in the afternoon. And if you're here in Buffalo and you're getting a cup of Tim Hortons, realize that those cups are bigger. That's not just 8 ounces. I think I measured it out. They're small as maybe about 16. So if you're not thinking that you're getting a lot of caffeine in because you have a medium or a small cup, you're getting more than you think. So really start cutting back on the caffeine, as well as making sure that you're not using it later in the evening. Start getting some sleep. We tend to burn the candle at both ends. And I realize that because you have a lot of duties, as I mentioned before. You're working, you're cooking, you're doing things for the kids, you're getting them here, you're getting them there. Again, the boundaries we talked about, you have to step back and say, what are some of the things that I may have to get rid of in my schedule or cut back a little bit on? The biggest thing that you need to, Starbucks has what did that say? Has the short size option. Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. But they said Starbucks has the short size option. So anything that you can do to start getting your caffeine down, and also making sure that you getting enough sleep. I think later on they're going to talk about I'm going to talk about the recommendation for 7 to 9 hours. I don't know if any of us are going to be able to get 9 hours in the evening, but making it a goal for at least 7 hours. Don't stay up trying to get this and that done. It'll get done at some point. It may not get done when you want it, but you'll get it done a lot more effectively and in good spirits if you're not working on 4 or 5 hours of sleep. So a lot of you will ask, well, I get up at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. because I'm hot flashing, or I just wake up. Then going to bed a little bit more earlier without the television going. Maybe that's the time to meditate on the word right before sleep, and then trying to work on getting enough sleep in. Things like melatonin over the counter, which is a natural sleep aid, might be helpful for some women. Magnesium which is just a mineral supplement. 250 of that right before bedtime would be helpful also. If those things aren't helping, talk it over with your doctor. But trying to get more sleep in is really important. Exercise can ward off things like depression. Trying to stay active, which I kind of find has been a major problem for a lot of my ladies during the pandemic, where you might be at home more and you're not getting out because you're sitting in front of a computer or a laptop for hours on hours. And I usually will ask, well, you're not going to work, so there was that commuting time. And again, you can kind of counsel some of your ladies who might say, I don't have time to exercise or be active because I'm at home on the computer, or I'm working with the kids who might be in a hybrid situation still. I don't think we have a lot of those left over, but some still are doing a hybrid for school. Then I just don't have time. They can be creative about it. You're not driving to work, so that 20 minutes or 15, 20 minutes that you took previously to drive to work, take that time now to maybe do a quick walk around the block, especially now that the weather's looking good. Or if you can download an app like FitOn, that's FITON, then my husband just turned on the water. But there's an app called FitOn, FITON. That's just one app. There's plenty of them out there. And with that app, you can actually download exercises, and something as short as 15 minutes. And you do that at the beginning, preferably at the beginning. Yes, the FitOn app. It's a great one because they'll ask you at the beginning of this app what your goals are. Are you trying to lose weight? Are you trying to tone or just strengthen? And then they'll also ask you, how much time do you have to devote to this? If it's only 15 or 20 minutes, then they'll give you videos that you can do at home for that 15 minutes, which I think is awesome because it allows you to stay active without necessarily going to a gym. And if you don't feel quite comfortable going to a gym, or you just don't have that time to put in an hour or so of exercise. So the next slide, please. This is going to be a little difficult to see, but I wanted to encourage you, and you can encourage the ladies at church, that when you're going through that perimenopause, menopause, remember, they're starting to have issues with gaining weight, and especially in that middle section, in their bellies. That can be very depressing for some women because their body image is something that's very important. And so you're like going, I'm still doing the same thing I did before. I'm still eating the same foods, yet I'm gaining weight. Well, it's because of that estrogen deficiency. And we find that women, as we go through that perimenopause, we are gaining weight in those areas because our body wants the estrogen. And in doing so, it's going to lay down a little bit more fat that has the enzyme in it that will it'll lay down more fat. There's the whole cortisol and a lot of things that it's going to lay down the fat in order to get that estrogen. But in order to compound that, or to help with that, you got to start looking at your diet. And I have a list here. Make sure that you're drinking adequate water, at least 8 ounces of water a day. That decreases suppresses that need to really get in some bad carbs and those things, because you're filling yourself up and you're hydrating yourself with water instead of hydrating yourself with things that have a lot of carbs in it. You want to eat healthy fats. A lot of people kind of go through these fad diets where I want to lose, 30 or 40 pounds in a month. Ugh, I'm not sure if that's a healthy way of doing that. But I find that if you start changing your diet slowly, working with some good fats, and there's ways of looking up what's a good fat versus what are the fats that are less healthier for you. Trying to eliminate all fat from your diet is probably not a reasonable thing to do. Fatty fishes such as salmon and mackerel are really great sources of fats, as well as things like olive oil. Um, that's important because you need that balance of maybe decreasing the bad carbs in your diet, but keeping the fats in there that really kind of help you with your metabolism. Getting your calcium in, because as you go through your menopause or that perimenopausal transition, you're going to start losing a little bit of bone, and you want to make sure that you are getting enough calcium in your foods. I'll probably try to get a little handout that has foods that have calcium in it. If you're lactose intolerant like me, you're not going to so much look at your milk per se, but there are milk alternatives but make sure that they have calcium in it. Almond milk, oat milk. I tend to like, what's that called? There's a milk that's ultra filtrated, and it'll come back to me, but it's an ultra filtrated milk that you can have in every day that's not going to make you bloated. And there's plenty of milk, plenty of other foods like collards, spinach, kale, broccoli. Even something as simple as oatmeal will give you, a packet of that will give you 150 milligrams of calcium, but you want at least 1,000 in with your foods. And I say that 1,000 in with your foods, not necessarily with a supplement. Fruits and veggies, don't forget those. Start experimenting. I have a patient, and I keep going back to my patients because a lot of times they give me really great ideas because they are in the community and they're working with not only their churches, but with their doctors who are doing kind of out of the box things to help them with their diets. This one patient she goes to a cooking class, and the cooking class, I believe, is online, and they actually have different programs where they talk about healthy breakfasts, dinners, lunches, where they all get together online and they have someone that presents, how do I make this a little bit more healthy? I am the first to say that when I do collard greens, my family wants the smoked ham hocks in it. They want this and that in it. But there are ways on a daily basis that you can make that a little bit more healthy for you. So I would say one great thing that you could possibly encourage your ladies to do is to start doing something like a cooking class. It breaks up, it gives them if they're interested in that, it gives them that camaraderie with other women who may be doing things, who have the same problem with trying to get their diets under control, and they can share what that knowledge back and forth. One thing that I always ask us to look at is if you're the type that you're still working and you come home and you're trying to figure out, oh, what am I going to cook tonight? I've got to be at church in 45 minutes. How can I get whatever I need to get on the table for my kids, husband, myself before I'm running out again? Well, spend the weekend doing, or whatever day that you have off, doing some meal prepping. And this is where the husbands can help out also. You can help in terms of if you've got to chop up some vegetables, you've got to prepare some meats, like chicken. You don't have to cook it all the way, but maybe just glazing over or just getting it prepared with seasoning, so that all you then need to do, instead of you coming home having to de-thaw something, or if it's de-thawed already, having to season it and doing everything else, it's already there. All you got to do is take it out of the refrigerator in the baggie that you put it in and start working with it. And then you're preparing something that's healthy for you, and you've already cut down on the cook time because the prep time isn't in there. So if we can get into that habit, that would be really helpful. Other things that will help with hot flashing in what we're preparing is realizing that foods that are high in salt, that are spicy, that are going to make us hot flash a little bit more. So you want to keep that in mind as you're prepping, and also keeping in mind that I know a lot ladies may not have alcohol intake. Some may. Something like as simple as wine, red wine. I'm not a drinker, so that's never been a problem for me, but I do counsel my ladies that red wine will make you hot flash more. So that might be a great time to just stop altogether or switch to white wines. But I'm just putting that in there because everyone isn't of the same mindset that they shouldn't be drinking. Next slide, please. I think we talked a little about this in terms of staying healthy, and as you're going through the perimenopause, it's that your body's changing, your hormonal balance may definitely be out of a line. So don't let your weight gain be the one thing that tips you over into more anxiety, depression, and just not feeling well. So I encourage your ladies to keep moving. Something as simple as walking. We're in Buffalo, so you have to be creative about exercise, because we spend a lot of our winter indoors because it's snowing or it's extremely cold out, and trying to exercise outside might not be as plausible. But I talked about Fit On as being an app that you can download. If you want, some of our older ladies can go to, and when I say older, I can't believe I said that because I'm in that age group, with Silver Sneakers, where you're working on exercising with a group. And I'm not sure if Silver Sneakers is still doing their onlines now that things are opening up a bit. But if you don't feel comfortable doing something in a group setting, don't forget, you can do it online also. I mentioned Silver Sneakers because as we're getting older, and those estrogen levels are going down, we start losing a little bit of muscle. So another part of exercising or staying fit is not simply just walking, which although walking is a good form of exercise, you might want to think outside the box and maybe doing some yoga or Pilates where you're using your own body weights. If you don't have weights at home, just make a soup can. 1 pound soup cans. Google a routine for upper body training or weight training. I use those little they're bands, exercise bands, because I can travel with those. The different color bands have different resistances with them, and you can start doing a routine to kind of doing something very simple, 5-10 minutes in the mornings as you're traveling, or even 5 or 10 minutes in the morning, just to kind of continue to tone the upper arms, because you realize as you get older, and I keep saying that, you know how you're waving and you get that little flap underneath the arm and you're going, oh my gosh, everything's flapping. Well, you can combat that a little bit by adding some strength training to that. So don't forget that when you're doing your exercise routines. And I mention this also in terms of mental health, because when you feel and look better, your mental health, yeah, you're more even keyed, and you're not as down on yourselves. And that I mentioned because a lot of you might hear your ladies complaining about, I've got more weight around my middle, or my arm, my arms are flapping, and our other parts are, not the way that I want them to look. Well, number one, they're women of God, and you don't get your self-esteem by the way you look, but it does help to be the best that you can be. So encourage them in whatever manner, whether they're in a group situation or at home, to start working actively on their bodies to keep them as fit so that they'll be able to do the activities that they need to do um, in appropriate manner, but also feeling well about themselves. Um, and this last part, stop eating after 7 p.m. because if you're putting all of that food in, you're not burning it. What does it go to? It's stored as fat. Your body's not burning it up, so it's going to store it as fat. So I would honestly say late night eating and snacking should be something that we should start trying to eliminate. Plus, the studies are showing that it'll disrupt your sleep also. And I'm not going to talk about the sleep again, just because we did talk about that previously, but it is important to not burn the candle so much in your schedules that you're not getting enough sleep. Next slide, please. I mentioned that the last straw in the camel's back. Well, another straw that we tend to contend with is our bladder function, especially more so when we're in the menopause, but definitely it can start in the perimenopause when you're in your mid-40s, where you're having to get to that bathroom a little bit more quickly, or the stream is a little different. And that's because your estrogen does give some support to the muscles in the bladder and in the urethra. When you start losing that, and when I say the urethra, that tube that goes from the bladder down to the opening where you urinate from, you have muscles that surround all of that. And as that becomes lessened or decreased because of an estrogen decrease, you may start then finding that I can't hold it as much as long as I did before. You've had a few babies, and naturally, sometimes, you cough, sneeze, and that was somewhat of an issue when you were younger, and now it's becoming more of an issue, and you're wondering what's happening. And part of that can be because of your estrogen decreasing. Things that you can do to combat that: limit your caffeine. I keep going back to that. Caffeine is a diuretic. If you're drinking caffeine in the morning and you're not getting your water in, that's one of the reasons why we might be running to the bathroom or unfortunately not making it, because that bladder gets irritated by the caffeine. If you're not hydrating, then you've got urine in that bladder that's very concentrated. And what does it do? Spasm. And when it does that, that's when you feel that urgency and you got to run to the bathroom. So number one, decrease the caffeine and increase your water. If we need to get a little weight off, start working with that, because as we decrease our weight, sometimes you're getting that extra weight off of that bladder. And start working with some Kegel exercises. If you don't know how to Kegel, then sit down and talk with if that's a long discussion, but sit down and talk with your doc about the proper way of Kegeling and whether you're doing it correctly with an exam. There's plenty that you can Google on Kegel exercising. And if you're finding that it's not working for you, especially if you're in the Buffalo area, I'm happy to say we've got a lot of pelvic floor physical therapists now that are coming into the area that can work with you on that. But I mentioned bladder dysfunction because that's just another straw that, we already have a busy schedule. We're wearing a lot of hats, and then all of a sudden I'm having problems with my bladder. That's just one thing that kind of tips you over. And now you're more irritable and depressed with anxiety about, oh, can I make it to the next bathroom session? So I'm hoping that some of what I've mentioned can help you to kind of see that number one, we're not machines, that estrogen process of losing estrogen is very natural. Hopefully not, uh, the process that we're going through with perimenopause is not, that too will end or get lessened in symptoms. But you can be helpful in terms of counseling some of our ladies in that, number one, there's ways of combating it. That number two, having their husbands there and communicating with them is necessary to let them know that, hey, I am going through something now, and you may not realize it because it's not something that you go through, but hopefully with the guys listening, that they realize that menopause isn't simply I'm hot flashing. There's a real reason why they're acting the way that they are, why our bodies are changing, and how, and from one woman to the next, it may be a little differently. Just like I have one patient who actually has so much anxiety that she had to go back on medications for it when she went through her menopause and that whole transition process. And others who just honestly, they don't have any symptoms. So you can't compare one person with the next. And in addition, there's nothing to quote unquote fix. I had a young man after I went through all of this said, well, how do we fix it? And I go, you don't fix it. You just kind of love them through it. It's a natural process that every woman is going to go through, because every woman is going to lose those final eggs that they have, but every woman goes through that process a little differently. So you have to be able to address each person individually and not as a group, and saying, okay, I know everything there is to know about menopause, and this is what you're going to do, and this is going to fix you. It may take a little bit more than that. I was reading an article recently online, and they were discussing how a Christian woman can deal with the menopause. And the article had a few nice points in it that I do want to go through with you. If you go to the next slide, please. They mention this. Like childbirth, menopause is a unique experience for women. There are no hard and fast rules on how it will affect women, only guidelines. And I said this over and over. Every woman is different. Some will experience more of these symptoms. Some may not experience any of them and just stop their periods and they're, they're happy-go-lucky. That I wish would be a lot of women, but not everyone. They also did mention a point in this article, which I thought was really good. They said that godly women will take her anxieties and fears to the Lord in prayer, seeking his guidance, his wisdom, his strength in order to overcome. And casting all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. I have a scripture up that says, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, Present your request to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. We have such a powerful resource. We can go to God in prayer and find out specifically what it is that, as individuals, women, we need to do to address the symptoms that we are experiencing. We have, if you're married, you have husbands that love you and who are mandated by God to love us. And when I say mandated by God to love us, that doesn't mean, that love means that he's going to deal with you specific to what you're going through. I have here, as a wife goes through the transition of menopause, a godly husband will make it his business to encourage her. He will show patience when emotions run high and his wife behaves strangely. And he will be there for her to give reassurance and comfort. Instead of worrying, the couple will present their positions to the Lord in prayer, confident in receiving divine help. So I want to open it up to questions that you have specifically, but realize that you have resources in going to God in prayer, your husbands, as well as your support groups with the women that are godly women that are around you. So, are there any specific questions about what I just presented or anything that I can answer for you?
Thank you. I believe we have, I'd like to give honor to my husband, none other than Bishop Kevin Dobbs, who has graced us with his presence among a million things that he has to do. But he's such a sweetheart. I asked him if he would come on and be the first man to be brave to speak and perhaps give some input or questions.
Well, I think that all of the information you gave was excellent, and it was an eye opener for me as far as what women go through. I kind of knew it, but I didn't know all of the details and why. But one of the things I was going to ask, when you talk about menopause, what is it called for men? I mean, is there a name for it? They tell us that men are going through a change of life, so I don't know what it would be called. That was one question that I had. And the other one, when you talk about estrogen, is that both male and female, or just for women? So that was the second question. And then I was listening to when you talked about the 2 million eggs that a woman would have during her earlier years, and then as she gets older, they drop down to 500,000 or 200,000, 300,000. So what I was going to ask is, when women have a problem getting pregnant, when their
Estrogen.
their estrogen levels, I guess, are very low. I don't know if the estrogen levels are low, but when they can't have children at a younger age, because a lot of times pastors, as myself, when you're dealing with younger couples, and there's a lot of other things that trigger difficulties in marriages, because possibly somebody's not getting pregnant, or they don't know if it's a man's fault or the woman's fault. Not so much fault, but a man gets tested and the doctors tell him he's okay, and back and forth. But I was just wondering, why can't women get pregnant during their childbearing years?
Okay, let me go to your first question about menopause for men.
Right.
I don't know if there's a specific question a specific name for it, but I do know that men do go through a process. I'm getting a lot of feedback, by the way. Men go through a process, but it's a lot later, and it's not because they're losing estrogen, because they're making testosterone, and it's the variance or the lowering of that. So they do go through a process, but it definitely is not as early as what we as women go through in our late 40s to 50s. And it has no relationship to estrogen, so to speak. Women make estrogen as well as a little bit of testosterone. And I find it interesting that when we go through our initial menopause, like that transitional period in our 40s and 50s, hopefully those symptoms start spreading out in terms of hot flashing and those types of things. But I do see a peak again into the 60s where they'll start hot flashing again after they've had this quiescent period. And it's because they're now starting to lose a little bit of that testosterone that their ovaries made before. So we have a little bit of a double whammy. We lose our estrogen and progesterone to begin with, and then we start losing the testosterone behind. So I'm not really quite sure why we were designed that way, but that's the way it happens. You guys have your testosterone and you have it for a long periods of time. So it is a little bit different, but I can say that you do have some transition. I can't say that of all the things that you experience, but that's a great time to start sitting down with your physician and kind of figuring out, is there something that I can, what's the ramifications? Because I know as women start going through their menopause, they have more issues with not only their symptoms, but they can have an increase in heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure. They don't have that estrogen that protects the heart as much. So that's why it's so crucial to start working with diet and exercise so that our heart conditions aren't risk for heart attacks and strokes are not as high. So that's an excellent time for you as men to get in also to make sure that there's things that you should be doing to kind of help with your health. Lastly, that last topic that you asked about in terms of younger couples who are not getting pregnant, the vast majority of them, it's not an estrogen issue. When the amount of women who have what we call premature ovarian failure is small. There's so many reasons why women, couples have problems conceiving. It could be something like endometriosis, which is a condition where they may have more scarring within the pelvis, or even if they don't have that, women who have endometriosis have higher problems of getting pregnant. They may have polycystic ovarian syndrome, where their periods are like they're getting naturally only about 3 or 4 periods a year. So that only gives you 3 or 4 tries. And then having to work with an infertility specialist is very important. So I would say there's a mirage of reasons why that's a perfect time to get in with infertility specialist. And I say both of you because I have a lot of ladies who want to go by themselves. And I really kind of think it needs to be both that are going so that you can see what she needs to go through also. So I hope that helped you in terms of those questions.
So much. I just thought I would ask a few because sometimes it's good to be able to give not so much medical advice because I'm not a doctor, but just getting the information and knowing that these are some of the areas that can be addressed when I'm talking to couples or, maybe even single women that are going through, certain things. And it's just good to be able to steer them in the right direction.
Yeah.
So it was very informative. I appreciate all the knowledge and the information that you gave us, and I'm thankful that I listened. I was here the whole time listening. You didn't see me. You didn't see me on the screen, but I was sitting right next to her, listening to everything. And it was very, very informative. So thank you so much.
Good.
All right.
Dr. Rush, I have gotten so much information, and I pray I've been seeing some comments come up on the screen that's been very positive and requesting for more. To my listening audience, don't worry, I tried to lock her down for next month, but the birth rates increase about June is prime season. You got kids
It is.
graduating and kids trying to get into the world. So we hope and pray that perhaps in the fall that we might be able to bring Dr. Rush back. I want you to know she is my personal OBGYN. So thank you, Bishop.
I have one more comment, not a question.
Mm-hmm.
When I was watching, I saw you said that men don't go through like women go through in their early 40s. You know, when they're going through that what do you call perimenopausal, and you know, this is the men don't really experience that. And I just saw a comment pop up in one of the ladies.
Yes, they do.
Yes, they do.
You know, I guess what I mean is that we go through them, and it's a little earlier in life than I think what you do have some changes, but ours is definitely a little bit earlier. And I think as women, we tend to wear a lot of hats. We really do. And we just plow through it. We love our men because you're there to support us, and we praise God for you, and we thank God for you. But the communication is key, because a lot of times we will not tell you how we're feeling or what we're going through. And that's our fault, because you guys are not mind readers. They don't know. You guys may not know all that we're going through unless we communicate that to you. So something that I really want to stress is that you should have knowledge of what could possibly happen with the menopause. And when you see that, being able to identify it. But we as women need to be able to say, you know what, I need to slow down. I need to sit with my husband and explain to him, you know, honey, I'm not sleeping. And I'm tired. And maybe we need to kind of adjust our schedules a little bit or something to kind of help out. But we do need to be able to communicate that to you.
So much. I appreciate it.
I also want to say I saw my goddaughter in love, Dr. Dana Brewington, who is a podiatrist. Stand by, Dana, because I intend on having you on as well, because our feet, taking good health, being health conscious with our feet are very important. And eventually, all of you, we plan to deal with the whole body. That is what the balance is in Kingdom Building Ministries. If we take our cars to get them aligned and to get the tires rotated and things like that, we as a body of Christ need to take on the physicality of and spirituality so that we can be better kingdom builders going forward. I don't know if you can answer this question here. Can you speak to
leaky gut and weight gain? Leaky gut is definitely an issue, and it has to do with not hormonal, but more of the balance of the bacteria in our guts. I have a nutritional counselor in our office that probably can speak to that a little bit more. And I'll definitely, once we get back to this, I'll have a little bit more of an answer for you. But with that, I kind of find that as we get older, and I don't know if this has anything to do with hormonal changes or whether it's just age related, and we start having more imbalances with our enzymes, which then do not allow us to process and take in the nutrients that we need. So in that whole process, we start gaining weight with it also. So I do encourage my ladies, not only when I talk to them about calcium intake and yada yada, I also talk about maybe some digestive enzymes, and then also looking at what it is that you're eating. And that's where doing some of the classes and healthy intake and eating, to kind of avoid this kind of leaky gut. And yes, there's probably a lot of people out that use supplements here and there, but that's where, I have to say I would defer and would probably say getting someone in who deals specifically with nutrition to kind of help you to find out what's really leaky gut and what's really more advertisement for someone to tell you to take another supplement. So yes, I don't know if I can answer that, Mrs. Dobbs, Carrie, in terms of leaky gut itself, but I can get that back to you. I do have your email address. She's asking, what are the symptoms to look for to know you have leaky gut? I don't know that in specific, although you do have more bloating. Your bowel movements are probably a lot more irritable, like IBS, where you're going from constipation to more loose stools. But the bloating is definitely there, and I'm quite sure the texture of your stools are a little bit different also. But you have to make sure that it's leaky gut and not some other issue like IBS. And most people know if they have more of the like Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. Their symptoms are a lot more severe. Or for some of us, you get a lot. And yeah, when you talk about extreme fatigue, joint pain, constipation, diarrhea, bloating, and brain fog, Ms. Stinson, you mentioned that. As what I'm saying is, yes, you can get those, but you have to rule out some other things, especially when you start talking about joint pain. Do you actually have rheumatoid, some problems with your joints because it's immunologic, or because you need to kind of work on getting a little bit of weight off of the joints itself. So I don't want to say that leaky gut causes all of those, but if you have a problem with what you're eating, and usually it comes from that, is more from your diet than anything else, then start slowly changing your diet.
Our bodies talk to us.
Mm-hmm.
Our bodies do talk to us. They give us signs. They give us signals. It's just like, again, with our cars, the way they're done now, you'll get a warning light. So sometimes we need to listen to those signals that we get and do a process of elimination. One thing that I do know, what I've learned in my research is that inflammation can cause a lot of these symptoms to occur once inflammation is in your body, and just a proper detox and watching what we're eating will help. I just wanted to give some highlights. You mentioned about our hormones. Don't hesitate to ask your doctor when you go about doing a hormone check, to make sure your thyroid levels are in proper alignment. Also,
Prolactin.
Yes, yes. You also mentioned that since, the pandemic, that our work life, needs to be balanced. Tell yourself you're not a robotic. We have to really get to the point where we forgive ourselves for taking on a lot of stress that God didn't intend for us to take on, and knowing to kind of push back and set boundaries. sometimes we feel that we are the answer to everything, and we're not. We're human, and you have to allow the body proper time to rest. One thing that I really like that another thing you said so much that I liked was having that a family that had a Zoom workout where they prayed the first minutes and then they worked out the next. I think
Mhm.
that is an excellent idea.
It's really an
Um,
awesome.
our bodies, we need the physical exercise, and that's so true. The physical exercise can help with depression and those mood swings. I see a question is there for you, Doctor, from Elder Reginald Williams.
Mhm.
Do you have any knowledge that you can share on the part plant-based eating?
Eating. You know what? I'm not a nutritionist per se, but these are great questions that I can probably get back to you on. I can honestly say that I tend to be more plant-based than with animal-based, and there's definitely some advantages of that. However, for me to sit here and kind of go through, that's another discussion. And I can probably, I can see where it would be needful. I've got a really, and I know you have someone also, but that's something that you could kind of sit down and have a discussion, a whole topic with. But me personally, to be able to give you something specific right this moment, I can't say that. But what I can encourage you to do is to sit down and talk this over with your physician. What specifically for you? I find a lot of people kind of come to a doc and they kind of go, "Well, uh, I I've been reading and researching, which is great, but then find out if that's good for you because you may have some other underlying factors that they want to deal with along with your diet. Um, if your cholesterol is up, they're going to talk to you about that, and that'll be a great one for uh, in terms of if your cholesterol is up, in terms of doing more of a plant-based to get your cholesterol down. Um, if your sugar level is up, they're going to really want to focus on that also. And again, you're probably going to have more of a better balance with that. But with that also comes with, I have a few patients who tell me that I don't eat meat, but I don't understand why my weight's up. Well, there's a lot of things that have carbs in it also that's not that you have to look at. So there's got to be a balance there. So unfortunately, I won't be able to give an in-depth on plants or plant-based, but I can say that if you don't have a physician that can either talk to you or refer you to someone in their network, then you find someone that you feel like is going to serve your needs. Because it's important to have that physician that can kind of coordinate things for you. And it says, does loss of appetite come with this process? In terms of menopause? Is that what you're asking? Does loss of appetite come with the perimenopausal process, Mrs. Hinton? I kind of, okay. I can't say that I have a lot of women that say that they lose their appetites during menopause. I find that they tend to change their dietary because they're frustrated with their weight. The things that they tended to eat before, or excuse me, the way that they ate before, their weights are going up even higher. So what they tend to do is to cut back on their eating, thinking that that's going to help them to lose their weight. And it's going to do the absolute opposite. If you're cutting back on calories severely, what's going to happen is that your body's going to think that it's in a starvation mode. And then it's going to hold on to what it can and store it as fat. Kind of like for flight or fight. It needs the energy stored as fat to be able to do whatever it needs, not realizing that you don't need the fat to store it as fat. So I would say that I don't see a lot of them saying that their appetites decrease during that process. Definitely later on in age, you definitely start decreasing your intake for a number of reasons. But what I find most helpful is what you're eating, when you're eating, and making sure that you're staying hydrated really helps with the process of weight reduction in addition to exercising. Hopefully.
I would like to say thank you so much. We extended our time from, instead of 10 to 11, we've gone to 10 to 11:31. So I'm so grateful for all of you who tuned in for this session, and there will be more to come. I feel that this social media affords us an opportunity to present these programs, and I would like to let you know, for those of you who enjoy, don't forget to leave an offering of some sort in appreciation for Dr. Rush, and also just the effect that we're doing in terms of the wellness clinics. On behalf of our advisor, Dr. Thelma Lewis, and also our diocesan Bishop Kevin Dobbs, our vice chair, none other than Suffragan Bishop Derek Farmer, and our district elder, Phyllis Lee Williams, who is the assistant chair. We say thank you, one and all, and may God bless you in Jesus' name. And Dr. Rush, thank you so much for answering my clarion call. And as you can see, you have an audience, and we look forward to seeing you perhaps in the fall. May God bless you in your prime season of bringing in those births. And I would just like to say, every child that you touch, we decree and declare that they shall walk in prosperity and divine health coming forward.
Amen.
God bless you.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, everybody.